12 habits quietly destroy automatic Dodge transmissions, turning flagship Chargers, Challengers, Durangos and Ram trucks into five-figure repair bills. From factory defaults Stellantis never warned you about, to launch tricks that shred ZF clutch packs overnight, these mistakes drain your investment fast. Which one punishes your powertrain the hardest? Let's count down from number 12. This habit feels harmless, and that is exactly why it quietly destroys your Dodge's selector mechanism. The moment your palm settles on the lever, constant sideways pressure transfers directly into the detents, bushings, and internal linkages. Whether your Charger runs a traditional PRND lever or your Durango uses the rotary knob, none of that hardware was engineered to carry constant side load for thousands of miles. Over months, detents wear smooth. Bushings loosen, selector feel turns sloppy. Then comes the second risk. A tired shifter is easier to bump. Drivers have reported accidentally nudging the selector toward neutral at highway speed, cutting drive to the rear wheels on a performance V8 already under load. For a premium touring vehicle built around precision control, that is the last thing you want happening at 70 miles per hour. Multiple Dodge technicians list loose or imprecise shifting as a leading warning sign of selector wear. Replacement is not a 10-minute job either. The shifter assembly, cables and sensors on a modern Charger or Ram 1500 run anywhere from $400 to $900 in parts alone, and labor pushes the final ticket higher. A slow, invisible wear curve becomes an unexpected repair bill the first time the vehicle refuses to exit park. What rarely gets mentioned is the electronics bill. Newer Chargers and Ram 1500 models rely on shift-by-wire sensors buried inside the assembly, and replacing those components on late model trim can push the total past $1,200 before a single hour of labor enters the invoice. The solution requires zero effort. Both hands on the wheel. Only touch the shifter when you are intentionally changing gears. That is it. No special training, no modification, no expense. Just a small habit change that preserves a component most Dodge owners never think about until it fails. You protect the mechanism by leaving it alone. Here is the uncomfortable truth. A huge percentage of Dodge owners never touch the parking brake. In warm climates especially, drivers rely on the transmission's parking pole to hold multi-ton vehicles in place on every incline, every driveway, every parking garage. Your Challenger weighs over 4,000 pounds. Your Ram 1500 weighs well over 5,000 pounds. The powell holding all of that is a single small steel pin. The Dodge Challenger Owner's Manual is explicit on this point. Never use the park position as a substitute for the parking brake. Always apply the parking brake fully when parked to guard against vehicle movement and possible injury or damage. Yet the advice goes ignored daily, and the powell carries loads it was never engineered to carry long term. Two things happen. First, the powell wears. Eventually it cracks, chips or breaks, leaving you with a vehicle that can roll when you think it is locked. Replacement requires transmission disassembly and sets owners back between $1,500 and $2,500. Second, the parking brake itself seizes from disuse. Challenger Forum owners in regions with heavy snow estimate that roughly 90% of older automatics have non-functional emergency brakes from years of neglect. The day you actually need it, it will not be there. The routine is simple, and it should become automatic. Stop completely. Apply the parking brake first, then shift into park every single time. This preserves the powell, keeps the cable and caliper mechanism exercised, and follows the manufacturer's own written guidance. You gain redundant holding power, and you extend the life of two separate systems with one 2-second habit. What about drivers who ditch gear entirely on long descents? Number 10. Coasting downhill in neutral. There is a myth that refuses to die. Shifting into neutral on a long descent saves fuel. It does not. Modern Dodge engines use the engine control unit logic that automatically cuts fuel injection the moment you lift off the throttle while in gear and rolling. You burn literally zero fuel on a closed throttle overrun. The instant you shift into neutral, the engine drops to idle and has to inject fuel just to keep itself running. The supposed savings work in reverse. That is the minor issue. The real problem is control. Coasting in neutral strips you of engine braking on exactly the kind of terrain where engine braking matters most. A heavy vehicle like a Durango descending a mountain grade generates enormous kinetic energy. Without driveline resistance slowing the vehicle, every ounce of stopping force falls on the friction brakes. Pads glaze, rotors overheat. Brake fade becomes a real possibility, and on a 6,000-pound SUV loaded with passengers and luggage, that is a safety emergency, not an inconvenience. Brake replacement on a Durango or Ram runs between $1,200 and $2,000 per axle, depending on the trim and components involved. That is money spent repairing damage that the transmission was designed to prevent in the first place. Beyond the dollars, the risk of losing stopping power on a steep road is simply not worth whatever imagined fuel savings drove the decision. Use the vehicle the way engineers intended. Stay in drive. For longer descents, drop into manual mode and select a lower gear to let the driveline do the braking work. Supplement with light brake taps. Your investment is protected, and so is every passenger riding with you. Number 9. Idling in drive at every long stoplight. This one is invisible, which is why it is so damaging. When you sit at a red light with the selector in drive and your foot on the brake, the torque converter remains engaged. The engine continuously tries to push the vehicle forward and the brakes hold it back. That tug of war generates heat inside the transmission that serves absolutely no purpose. The clutches carry static load. The fluid shears. Temperature climbs the longer you sit there. Dodge transmission specialists flag overheating as one of the most common underlying factors in torque converter failure and internal wear, particularly in stop-and-go traffic and hot climates. If your Charger or Ram lives in city conditions, every single long stoplight becomes a small thermal event. Stack hundreds or thousands of them together, and you have accelerated fluid breakdown and premature converter wear without ever exceeding the speed limit. A failed torque converter is not a light repair. Shops typically charge between $2,800 to $4,500 for a converter replacement on a modern Dodge automatic. And that assumes nothing else inside the case needs attention. If contamination has circulated through the valve body and clutch packs, the number climbs fast. All of it traceable back to a habit most owners do not even realize is happening. The fix is free. If you are stopped for more than 30 to 60 seconds, shift into neutral or park and set the parking brake. The transmission unloads, heat dissipates, wear stops compounding. Anything under 30 seconds, leave it alone. Anything longer, give the drivetrain a break. Protect the torque converter you paid for. What happens when the throttle replaces the brake on hills? Number 8. Holding your Dodge on a hill with the throttle. This habit is a thermal catastrophe disguised as a convenience. When you balance the throttle against gravity on an incline, rather than using the brake, the transmission is generating forward torque while the vehicle is not moving. The only thing absorbing that mismatch is the clutch packs, which slip continuously to keep the output shaft from rotating. That slipping is controlled friction. Controlled friction generates heat. Sustained heat glazes the friction material, breaks down the automatic transmission fluid, and cooks the very components designed to handle engagement smoothly. Ram trucks and Durangos carrying significant weight on steep driveways, ramps, or parking structures are especially vulnerable. A loaded Ram 1500 inching its way up a grade on the throttle alone is effectively running a private clutch destruction test. Dodge technicians specifically call out this kind of hill holding as a recurring contributor to torque converter failure and internal clutch wear. This is not a rare scenario either. Tight parking garages, steep restaurant driveways, boat ramps, and stop-and-go traffic on hilly city streets all create dozens of micro opportunities every single month to cook the clutch packs without realizing it. The damage accumulates silently between oil changes. The damage is neither theoretical nor slow. Extended throttle hold sessions have been documented to produce visible clutch glazing within surprisingly few incidents. Once friction surfaces are compromised, the clutch pack does not recover. Replacement costs on the ZF 8HP family used across the performance Dodge lineup typically run between $3,500 and $6,000 in parts and labor. The correct technique was built into the car from the factory. Use the brake pedal to hold position. If your trim includes hill hold assist, engage it. Modern electronic parking brakes can hold a stationary vehicle indefinitely with zero transmission load. Every one of those tools exists specifically so you do not cook the drivetrain on hills. Use them. Number 7. Slamming into park before a full stop. This is a close cousin of the rolling reverse shift, and it comes with its own distinctive failure mode. Inside every Dodge Automatic is a small steel component called the parking P-Owl. When you move the selector into park, the Powell drops into a rotating gear and physically locks the output shaft. That mechanism exists to keep a stationary vehicle stationary. It was never engineered to stop a moving one. When the Powell drops into a still spinning gear, two things can happen at once. The Powell itself can chip or snap. The teeth of the parking gear can shear, round off, or crack. In either case, the locking system is now compromised. Your vehicle may feel like it is in park, but the mechanical link holding it there is damaged. On the next steep driveway, it may simply roll. The Dodge Challenger Owner's Manual addresses this directly. Apply the parking brake before placing the gear selector in park. Otherwise, the load on the transmission locking mechanism may make it difficult to move the gear selector out of park. That warning exists because the manufacturer has seen the damage firsthand. Shops quote parking Powell and transmission gear repairs between $1,500 and $2,500 once internal access is required, and that is before any secondary damage is accounted for. The routine is identical to a well-engineered parking procedure. Stop completely, foot on the brake, parking brake first, then park. That sequence protects the Powell, keeps the gear teeth healthy, and guarantees the selector will release freely when you return. It is a 4-second habit that can save $5,000. What about the shift that kills transmissions even faster? Number 6. Shifting between drive and reverse while still rolling. This single mistake is arguably the fastest way to permanently damage a Dodge Automatic. The moment you move the selector from drive to reverse or from reverse to drive while the vehicle is still moving, the transmission's clutch packs and bands are forced to absorb the full momentum of the vehicle in one instant. That is thousands of pounds of kinetic energy being dumped into friction surfaces that were designed for smooth, controlled engagement. The physics are brutal. The clutch packs experience an immediate, enormous friction spike. Metal surfaces glaze almost instantly. The heat generated in that fraction of a second can begin cooking the automatic transmission fluid on the spot, and that introduces carbon contamination into the hydraulic circuit. That contamination will circulate through every valve body passage for as long as that fluid remains in the case. Dodge transmission specialists list rough or jerky shifting, skipped gears, hesitation, and eventual failure to select gear as the classic downstream symptoms of this specific abuse. On heavier vehicles like the Ram 1500 or Durango, the mass involved multiplies the forces and damage accumulates faster. On the ZF 8HP family found in performance Chargers and Rams, the A-clutch pressure plate and the E-clutch hub splines are already documented. Weak points that shock loading from a rolling shift punishes directly. Full rebuilds on these transmissions start around $5,000 and climb past $8,500 quickly, depending on what the teardown reveals. The repair is always more expensive than any possible time saved by that rolling shift. The rule is absolute. Come to a complete stop with your foot firmly on the brake before every directional change. 2 extra seconds preserves the entire drivetrain. Towing heavy loads without protection is just as ruthless. Number 5. Towing or hauling past real limits. Heat is the #1 killer of automatic transmissions. There is no second place. And nothing generates heat faster than towing or hauling near or beyond the vehicle-rated capacity. Ram forum threads document transmission fluid temperatures exceeding 240 degrees Fahrenheit in the cooler lines during long, uphill tows. With owners reporting limp mode warnings and hard shifts on grades they assumed their truck could handle. A recurring cause in those reports is a thermostatic valve in the cooling circuit that fails to open properly, allowing fluid to bypass the cooler exactly when it is needed most. One dealer-employed respondent on a Ram discussion board mentioned replacing this valve in more than 20 trucks. It is a known, documented failure pattern that gets worse the more you work the vehicle. Dodge diesel owners running Cummins engines face their own version of the same problem. Forum guidance specifically recommends disabling overdrive on steep climbs to prevent the transmission from hunting between gears and generating even more heat. And ZF, the actual engineers behind the 8-speed used in modern Rams, flag towing applications as requiring the shortest end of their fluid service interval range because of how much faster the fluid degrades under load. When a towing-damaged Dodge transmission finally gives up, repair bills range from $4,500 to over $8,500 depending on which components have failed and whether the converter is salvageable. An auxiliary cooler install, by comparison, runs $300 to $600. Those are real costs to keep in mind. Stay under the tow rating, engage tow haul mode on every trip, disable overdrive on long climbs, add an aftermarket transmission temperature gauge. That investment pays for itself on the first real trip. If you enjoy this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Number 4. Ignoring fluid leaks and low fluid levels. Automatic transmission fluid performs 3 critical jobs at once. It lubricates every moving part inside the case. It carries away the enormous amount of heat generated under load. And it provides the hydraulic pressure that engages every clutch pack, every band, and every gear change your Dodge makes. A leak does not just reduce lubrication, it compromises all 3 functions at the same time, and every mile you drive on a low fluid transmission accelerates damage in 3 different directions at once. The warning signs are not subtle. A burnt smell from the vehicle. A darkened fluid color where the factory red has shifted toward brown or black. A red or brown puddle under the car where there should not be one. Dodge transmission symptom guides treat every one of these as an immediate diagnostic priority, not a cosmetic concern. The consequences compound. A seal replacement caught early typically runs between $400 and $800. A transmission that has been driven hundreds of miles on chronically low fluid sees seal deterioration, slipping gears, overheating, and eventually total failure. Rebuild costs then climb into the $5,000 to $8,500 range on most modern Dodge automatics, and they are significantly higher on performance SRT trims. The ZF8 HP transmissions used across the Charger, Challenger, Durango, and Ram 1500 lineup already have documented weak points in the A-clutch pressure plate, E-clutch hub splines, and valve body. None of those components tolerate starved lubrication well. Inspect your driveway weekly. Any spot of fluid gets diagnosed immediately. Early intervention is the single cheapest form of transmission insurance available to you. What if you make that leak even worse with one burnout? Number 3. Performing neutral drops or rev bombing your Dodge. This one is a deliberate act of destruction, even when it is framed as performance. A neutral drop means revving the engine in neutral, then slamming the selector into drive. In that instant, the transmission is asked to absorb the full torque of a high RPM engine through clutch packs that were engineered for controlled, gradual engagement. The result is a shock load the system was never designed to handle. The damage is immediate and expensive. On Dodge diesel platforms running the 47RE, 48RO, or 68RFE transmissions, the one-way clutch inside the torque converter is a documented failure point under aggressive full throttle launches. When that clutch lets go, the pump shaft can spin violently enough to strip the pump drive splines, taking out the oil pump and the converter at the same moment. Repair means a new converter, a new pump assembly, and whatever else got contaminated by the debris. On gasoline-powered Chargers and Challengers running the ZF 8-speed, the weak point shifts. The A-clutch pressure plate is already known to bend or crack under shock loading, and rev bombing is the exact kind of load that finishes it off. Shops commonly charge between $3,500 and $6,000 for these repairs once the teardown is complete. Here is the irony. Dodge already engineered the safe version of what you want. Modern SRT and Scat Pack trims include factory launch control, which manages boost, torque, and driveline engagement in a controlled, drivetrain-safe manner. The performance is delivered without the destruction. If you want to leave the line hard, use the system built for it. Respect the engineering, protect your investment. And yet the biggest killer is not how you drive at all. Every automatic transmission on the planet is engineered around a specific fluid. Viscosity is matched to the hydraulic circuit. Friction modifiers are matched to the clutch material. Additive packages are designed to protect specific bearings, seals, and solenoids. The moment you pour a generic or incorrect fluid into a modern Dodge transmission, you have violated the engineering of the entire assembly. The consequences are not subtle. Wrong viscosity disrupts hydraulic pressure, which causes harsh or delayed shifts. Mismatched friction modifiers cause clutch packs to either slip excessively or bite too aggressively, both of which generate heat and wear. The additive chemistry protects against seal swelling, foaming, and corrosion. Get it wrong and you start accumulating internal damage from the first full heat cycle. Cross-contamination makes the situation worse. Even a partial refill with the wrong fluid mixes permanently with whatever correct fluid remains in the pan, and there is no shortcut to purging the mix. Every clutch engagement from that moment circulates a compromised chemistry through the valve body. The ZF-8HP family found in modern Chargers, Challengers, Durangos, and Ram 1500s requires ZF Lifeguard Fluid 8 or the Dodge OEM equivalent. The 68 RFE in Cummins-powered Rams has its own specification. The older 5-speed and 6-speed automatics in pre-2015 Chargers and Challengers require yet another formulation. None of these are interchangeable, regardless of what a universal bottle on a parts store shelf claims to cover. Fluid technicians are blunt. Using a generic automatic transmission fluid in a precision transmission is effectively guaranteed damage. Clutch pack replacement, solenoid pack replacement, and valve body cleaning on a modern Dodge automatic together typically run between $3,500 and $7,000 and frequently uncover further wear once the unit is open. Buy fluid from a Dodge dealer or a ZF certified supplier. Verify the specification against your exact model year. No shortcuts, no substitutions, ever. One myth destroys more Dodge transmissions than all 11 combined. Number 1. Believing the lifetime fill transmission fluid myth. This is the single most damaging piece of misinformation in Dodge ownership, and Stellantis prints it in the owner's manual. The Ram owner's manual states that routine fluid and filter changes are not required, describing the factory fill as sufficient for the life of the vehicle. It sounds convenient, it sounds modern, it is wrong, and it costs owners thousands of dollars. The contradiction is not hypothetical. ZF, the company that actually engineered and manufactures the 8-speed transmission in every modern Ram and in countless Chargers and Durangos, publishes its own maintenance guidance. ZF recommends changing the fluid every 50 to 75,000 miles under normal conditions and sooner when you tow, haul, or use the vehicle in hot climates. The engineers who built the transmission disagree with the marketing team that sells it. Real-world evidence is overwhelming. Ram forum owners who have changed so-called lifetime fluid share photos of fluid pulled at 70 or 80,000 miles that looks nothing like the clean factory fill. It comes out dark, burnt, and loaded with clutch debris. One long-time owner reported reaching 310,000 miles on his Ram specifically because he ignored the lifetime fill claim and followed ZF's schedule instead. Industry data backs him up. Over 60% of automatic transmission failures are caused by degraded or incorrect fluid. There is a warranty angle worth knowing about as well. Once the factory powertrain coverage expires, typically around 5 years or 60,000 miles, every single consequence of neglected transmission fluid lands directly on the owner's credit card, not the manufacturer's balance sheet. The math is simple. A properly performed drain and fill service at an independent shop runs between $300 to $500. A transmission rebuild caused by neglected fluid runs between $5,000 and $8,500, often more. Follow the engineers, not the brochure. Change the fluid on ZF's schedule, use ZF-approved fluid, and your drivetrain will outlast the body. Across all 12 mistakes, one pattern is impossible to miss. Dodge automatic transmissions punish three things mercilessly: neglected fluid, accumulated heat, and shock loading. Every single item on this countdown traces back to one of those three forces. None of it means Dodge builds inferior vehicles. The engineering is formidable, but the ownership experience extends far beyond the showroom, and the dealership has zero incentive to prepare you for it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one.